Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the September 28th meeting of the Auburn Board of Selectmen. This open meeting of the Town of Auburn Board of Selectmen is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, which suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely as long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For the public to join this meeting remotely by telephone, 1-800-650-3123 and access code 235-235-861. Or the public can join via computer at https://global.gotomeeting.com/join/2352-35861. As a preliminary matter, this is Doreen Goodrich, Chair of the Board. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Excuse me. Lionel Berthiaume?
Yes.
Dan Carpenter?
Yes.
Tristan LaLiberty? Tristan LaLiberty? Tristan is here. I believe he's going to call in to confirm. Tristan, can you give me a high sign that you're present so I can confirm that you're present? Thank you. Tristan is present. He's calling in, but he can't hear this call.
Yeah.
Scott Wren?
Here.
Okay. Town officials and employees when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative.
Yes.
Town Manager Jacobson?
Yes.
Assistant Town Manager and CFO Ed
Yes.
Kazanovic? Administrative Assistant Sharon Kwiatkowski?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, please note that this meeting is being recorded for Auburn Cable Television. And please also note that each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. The first agenda item we have is a 5 p.m. executive session in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, strategy with respect to litigation. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we go into executive session.
We have some feedback here. Mr. Berthiaume,
Sorry.
you need to read the entire motion if you're going to make the motion.
I'm not sure I have that in front of me, Madam Chair.
Does a member have the executive session in front of them?
I didn't get anything. I know it was said that it was going to get sent out today. I didn't get anything.
It's at the top of the agenda.
Yeah, through the chair, it's under item 2. It's the second sentence.
Just let me page up and I will do that.
Madam
And
Chair, I
also-
have it in accordance with the Mass General Law. Well, isn't that what you just read?
Yeah, and it would be, I move to go into executive session, that point on.
Okay, I move to go into an executive session in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to deliberate upon matters which, if done in an open meeting, could detrimentally affect the position of the town regarding strategy with respect to litigation, to come out of executive session and reconvene in an open meeting.
That motion was made by Mr. Berthiaume. Do I have a second?
Scott Wren, I'll second.
Mr. Wren seconds the motion. This is a roll call vote. Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Berthiaume?
Yes.
Mr. La Liberty,
Yes.
Mr. Ren,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. We will now, Mrs. Jacobson.
Yes, if I may, Madam Chair, just want to let everyone know. So again, to do this, everyone will click on the bottom of their screen where it says leave this meeting. So you're going to leave this meeting, then use the link that I sent you for the executive session. If you don't get in right away, just be patient because I have to get in before you do. So I was trying to do both, but I can't do it. I can't run 2 meetings at once. So we all have to leave. Just give me a minute to set up and get in, and then I'll let you all in. All right?
Okay, so we'll let Mrs. Jacobson leave the meeting, and I'm just going to declare that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body relative to litigation, and that the board will come out of executive session and reconvene an open session. Again, this open meeting of the Town of Auburn Board of Selectmen is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, which suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely as long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. You can join remotely by calling 408-650-3123 and enter access code 235861. Or you can join via the computer at global.gotomeeting.com/join/235-235-861. This meeting is also being recorded by local public access. We have no public hearings or presentations. We have no communications. Under Board of Selectmen general items, our first item is Century Sportsman's Club outdoor entertainment license for Haunted Hayride and Spooky Walk, 351 Rochdale Street. Is there someone who will be speaking on this item present?
Yes, I'm here. Frank Heitch, treasurer of Century Sportsman's Club.
Alrighty, so we have a representative from the Century Sportsman's Club. Is there someone from the Auburn Board of Health who will be speaking to this issue?
Yes, Eileen Alexander, I'm on.
Thank you. Mr. Height, I will recognize you first, and you can talk about your application.
So this is an event that we've done for many years.
Hold on a minute. Can anyone hear Mr. Height? No, we've lost your sound, Mr. Height.
You know?
We cannot hear you. If you want to try to log off, log back in, we will hold this item. Okay, go ahead. You can log off and log back on, and we'll move on to a different agenda item. I see the town clerk is here. Is that for the quorum and the Riley Award? What agenda item are you here for?
Can you hear me? Yes, that, the Riley Award, and I believe for the grant too.
All righty. Is there a motion to move up agenda item, hold on a minute, the Riley Award?
Can you hear me?
Agenda item 6C. Is there a motion to move up agenda item 6C?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, by a roll call vote, excuse me, Mr. Berthium,
Yes.
Mr. La Liberty,
Yes.
Mr. Kaplan,
Yes.
Mr. Ren,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Mrs. Cremo. We're on the Riley Award. What is the request?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Okay. So to appoint a media person from Auburn, which I believe we only really have one now, and I have talked to Jeff Labonte to see if he was interested, and he is,
Okay,
to be part of the committee.
okay. And can you give us a timeline on what is happening, when nominations are open and when they close, and when this,
Nominations are, sorry. Nominations are open until October 5th at 4 PM. They have to be submitted by that time, and then the meeting would be at 6 PM that night.
6 PM on
to
October 5th?
determine. October 5th, so a week from today.
Okay. Do members have any questions of Ms. Grimo? Is there a motion to appoint Mr. Labonte as the media representative to the Riley Committee?
So moved.
Mr. Berthew made the motion. Is there a second?
Second, Scott Ren.
Oh, second.
Second by Mr. Wren. Votes have to be by roll call. Mr. Berthew?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. La Liberty?
Yes.
Mr. Wren?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. And what was the second item, Ms. Grimo?
If you had any questions on the grant that I applied for under, what number is that? F7F, under the town manager's items.
Can you just tell us a little bit about the grant?
Well, the grant was offered through, it was offered to election officials under the Center of Tech and Civic Life. And the funds can be used for poll worker training, any technology improvements that will help expedite and improve mail ballot processing, a ballot box if you wanted to get a ballot box, additional signage. There's many different ways that you can use the money for. And I applied for it last Thursday or Wednesday and was notified that we received the grant of $5,230. And it can be used for anytime during the period of June 15th through 2020 through December 31st of 2020.
Thank you. Do members have any questions? Seeing none, is there a motion to accept and expend the grant in the amount of $5,230 from the Center for Tech and Civics Life?
Madam
Is there-
Chair, I'll make a motion to accept and expend a grant in the amount of $5,230 from the Center for Tech and Civic Life's COVID-19 response grant to support election activities.
Okay, is there a second? Is there a second? Second from Mr. La Liberty by a roll call vote. Mr. Bertheum?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. La Liberty?
Yes.
Mr. Wren?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Is that all you have, Ms. Grimo?
Yes.
Great. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank
and
you.
Good luck with your
Okay,
election.
thanks. Have a good night. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Mr. Height, if you can just test your microphone to see if we can hear you now?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. So if you can tell us about the project that you have. We have new members on the board since you were last before us for a similar application.
Well, Scott's a customer, so he knows what it's all about.
Well, we're on the record and we have to keep it formal.
I understand. So for many years, Century Sportsman's Club has held an event around Halloween, a haunted hayride and a spooky walk. We understand the situation that's going on with COVID. Earlier in the summer or later in the summer in August, we thought that possibly we wouldn't be able to have the event. However, we were working with the Board of Health. They've given us the guidance from the state, and we believe that with substantial changes, we can hold part of our event. So some of the changes that we're proposing are to hold only the hayride and to eliminate the spooky walk. Main reason behind that is trying to choreograph the crowds and pull off two events without groups bunching up in between events. We're also not going to have food service this year. We're not going to have beverage service this year. All the ticketing is going to be done online and in advance. There'll be time slots for each guest, so they'll come at assigned times. They'll stay in their vehicles until they're called to the event. So we're going to have all kinds of sanitation and distancing protocols in place. We're severely limiting our customer base. We've got a number of 100 per hour, 100 customers per hour. And in a single night, that would be around 300 customers for us. Our record in the past is over 900 in one night. So the other thing we've done, because of the late start, normally we run every Friday and Saturday in October. We're just proposing the last 3 weekends this year because we're getting such a late start. And so that's the majority, I think, of what you need to know.
Okay. I can open it up to board questions and comments, or we can hear from the Board of Health first because of the requirements of the Board of Health with COVID. Do members have questions? No questions from any members? Okay, I have questions. So, sorry, I'm very, I've seen how the Board of Health has been working and very concerned with safety of families with this event. What are the timeframes that you're selling tickets? How many, like you said, you're going to sell 100 per hour. Like how are the blocks going to run?
No, it's 100 per night. So we have 3 hay wagons. We're proposing to load them at 50%, no greater than 50% capacity. So we figure that we can fit 10 to 12 people per wagon. So that's how we came up with 33 passengers per trip. And so we normally run about a 15-minute ride. We're proposing to run 3 rides per hour. That gives us 5 minutes in between to sanitize the wagons and wipe everything down between rides. So that's how we came up with 100 per hour, 300 per night. We're going to run from 7 p.m. till 10 p.m.
And will you require everyone to wear a mask?
Yes, everyone will wear a mask. There'll also be temperature screening for admittance. So anyone who tests over, I believe it's 100.4 is the CDC guideline, will be turned away. Their entire group will be turned away. And yes, there will be masks on, all the help and all the staff at all times. And like I said, hand sanitizer will be available on the way in and on the way out.
And how will you have you had discussions on how you'll handle it if someone refuses to either have their temperature checked or refuses to wear a mask?
They'll have to leave the event. I mean, that's the requirements. I mean, I think most people, are going to be expecting this. I mean, I've been temperature checks going into restaurants. I mean, you wear a mask everywhere you go. So I don't think it's anything new for anybody.
I would agree. Sadly, you see many people, many places who, you have patrons who are just refusing to wear it. So I just was, you're going to have potentially 100 an hour. I just wanted to see how, because the town won't be there monitoring this every minute you're open.
The other thing I forgot to mention, sorry. The thing I forgot to mention that the Board of Health asked for is we'll have a sign-in book as well. We'll be collecting names and phone numbers and the time that they were there. So if there is some sort of an incident, we'll see if there's an outbreak. But if something happens, we'll have a way to contact people and get back to them.
Okay. So another question I have for you is, have you had, I know this has been difficult for, I'm a member of the Elks, and I know it's been difficult for them as well. Have you had any events or any larger groups at the Sportsman's Club since we've been under the governor's executive order for COVID regulations?
There have been a couple of political rallies that were held outdoors. And again, all the protocols were put in place for them. And there was no incidences with that. Nothing's been held inside the building basically since March, and our kitchen and our bar have been closed since March, but there have been a couple of outdoor events.
Okay, and did you work with the Board of Health on those events?
No, they were under the 50-person guidelines.
Okay. Okay, and I just have one statement, and we've been down this road before. It's a little disappointing. I saw on Facebook that you're already advertising for this.
Yes.
And we've talked about this in the past, that you really shouldn't be advertising until before you come and get all of your proper permits.
Well, the time restricted ticket thing, we had to figure out how. We've never done that in the past, so we had to sign up with a company who could provide that. And so, we sort of did that in preparation for this meeting, so that we had a system in place for being able to distribute the tickets in the way that it needs to be done this year.
Okay, thank you. And if members don't have any questions, I would like to hear from Ms. Alexander. I'm not opposed to this event. I just want to be sure that all safety precautions are followed. Having 300 people a night at an event is concerning to me, so I just want to make sure that the Board of Health is completely on board with this and is comfortable with what has been put in place. So go ahead, Ms. Alexander.
Hi, hello, everyone. We have been working with Mr. Height for well over a month. He did come to us early on and then decide that maybe it was something that they couldn't do. As the guidance in the state opened up a bit, they did feel like maybe they could make it something that would work. We worked with Mr. Height before the CDC came out with their guidance, and I know they have some information out. The state does not yet, and I think, Frank, you can attest to this. We worked with him based on what we have currently today. Should that change, the event's 3 to 4 weeks away. Should that change, then it could change anything that he already presented to us. So having said that, the requirement for events, both indoor or outdoor, have specific guidance for attendance and COVID plans required. So the 33, Doreen, you were speaking of, they came up with is under the 50 per time. So outdoor events allow 50 people. So by doing it in intervals like his ticketing booth will do, that's where the 33 came up. One hayride has to end before another one starts. So we did get an exact COVID plan from them. We asked what the state would have asked from him, and we did get it.
Okay.
In a time right now where we're seeing a little uptick, any event that we look at is with caution, and gathering people for these type of events is with hesitation. So he did present in the event presented what we need according to the guidance. I think that the coming weeks will tell whether this event should be something that we still are able to have. I don't know if you have specific questions for me, but I can go over the COVID plan in more detail if you'd like.
I would appreciate, just if you could give a simple summary of the COVID plan. Like I said, I believe this is the largest event we'll be holding in town under the new governor's executive, the governor's new executive. So just, I think, I can speak for myself that I need some reassurance that you've gone through and have a very specific plan.
Yep, so they have the same map that they would always use. So the hayride itself is not changing with exception of the capacity limit on the wagon. The hayride does take about 12 to 15 minutes to go through. Once the guests are on the hay wagon and they're at their allotted limit, they'll go through the route as it always has been. What's changed is all the other items you need to get them from their vehicles to the wagon. So we asked of the club to give us a detailed plan with, it actually includes 9 stations from the time they drive in the driveway until they actually load onto the wagon, load off of the wagon, right down to the bathrooms and the hand station. After they did that, I asked for each station to have its own separate COVID plan and procedure that was posted at the station to take care of people that needed breaks, so that everyone would be trained on each station. They did provide that to us last week. I can give you an idea. For the greeter station, after the car pulls in, the greeter will stop every vehicle and ensure that they have a ticket. They'll park them. If they come too early or they don't have a ticket, then they'll have to leave. Once they're parked, they'll be informed about the face masks. There's about 4 different times when they're informed about the face mask use. They have to remain in their vehicle until their ride is called. So that's 1 station, 1 person. It will be posted. If another person takes over, it remains the same. The guest parking, once they go there, again, they're talked about their mask, when they can leave the vehicle and when they can go to the ticket booth. They'll be brought to the ticket booth. Everyone say it's a 7 o'clock. All the 7 o'clock people will be brought to the ticket booth. They'll give 1 name per party, and they'll get their instruction from what has to happen on the hayride and start being loaded on. When that's the first one, when the ride comes back, there's a separate disembarkment area. So when they're disembarked into one area, the wagon gets disinfected in between each one. So the wagon will be disinfected, and the new group in a whole separate area will get loaded on, and then the group that's disembarked can go to their cars and leave. And it will repeat itself through. They have the bathrooms open with regular cleaning, and they have a hand washing sink. They have a separate employee parking, so that the parking that we're talking about will truly only be for the guests and set up so that they're for the next ride. So when one area lets out, then the 8 o'clock people can come in and they can park and go through the same. We have talked about who on the ride would actually be responsible for the mask wearing. Frank has talked about the driver and some big signage actually on the wagon, where they can let the driver know if someone decides as soon as they get on, if a group or a family take off their masks, then the driver will be alerted and will be responsible for stopping the ride and making sure that everyone has a mask on. So these are the requirements from the state. These are the COVID plans that we asked for and that we did receive. But again, this is for a climate where the numbers are good and the state hasn't put out anything more restrictive. So currently right now, the state has referred us to the CDC, but they have told us on several phone conferences that they are still working on state guidance for some Halloween and fall events.
Thank you, Eileen. I'll just ask my couple questions to Eileen and then open it up for board questions. So we will likely, well, I can't speak for the board, but if we were to approve this tonight, I see that we have conditions, a memorandum from the DCG. Should we, I know you've mentioned that this will move forward as long as the governor doesn't issue any new orders. Should we make this approval if it passes conditional on the governor not having any additional executive orders?
Absolutely.
Okay. And
We would need to,
Can you make that,
I'm sorry.
you know, we would have to meet the new orders? If they got a little more restrictive, I mean, give us the opportunity to meet the new orders.
correct. And I just want to go back to the food and beverage. There will be absolutely no food or beverage served. Mr. Height, does that mean the bar will be closed to members that evening?
Yes, the bar has been closed since March. Our refrigeration is shut down. Yep, we have not, no bar, no food.
Okay. Eileen, do you want to add anything or make any recommended conditions?
I do, Frank, I don't know if we had talked about this, but after I reviewed some more of it, it's just that all staff associated with this event would require COVID training according to your COVID plan.
Yes, absolutely. That's in the general notes at the beginning of the plan.
Okay. Okay.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Berthium, is that Mr. Berthium? Yes.
Yes. I just, I want to thank Eileen and the Board of Health and thank Mr. Height for, it seems like a heck of a lot of work. You know, I think it's been a long time coming to get us back up and going, even if it's limited. You know, it's been tough going and a lot of people are antsy and ready to get going again. And it sounds like, you know, you've both parties have worked very hard to make sure that the I's were dotted and T's were crossed. So I think it's a very positive thing. We'll keep our fingers crossed that health-wise, it goes off when it goes off, that it goes off without a hitch. And the only question I have is if for some reason, you know, we were to have an outbreak and it was to get postponed or canceled at last minute, that company that makes the reservations has the means to refund people's money, or is that, how does that get handled?
Yes, I'm sorry. I have been on the website. I've seen some of the transactions, and we have a member who runs a business who is already doing this at his business. So he's the one who gave me the information from this ticketing company. It's a company called Ticket Spice. And yes, they do have the ability to issue refunds. You just basically click on a button and process refund for, you know, one person, or if we have a rain night or something, we would have to refund those tickets.
No, just through the chair. Again, I'm looking forward to, you know, seeing things getting going again. And I think this is a good start. And I think, you know, you've done a great job putting it together, and I wish you the best of luck with it.
Thank you.
Do any other members have any questions before we move to a motion? No. If I can just confirm with Sharon, I know that we have all of the abutters listed in our packet. Did we receive the forms back that everyone was notified properly?
Mr. Chairman, we do not get certified return receipts for these. We just have to notify the abutters.
Okay, but we know that they were all notified?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anyone on this call who isn't a butter? Or anyone from the public who wanted to comment? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the license for the Century Sportsman's Club to have the haunted hayride. It won't be a spooky walk, right? So just a haunted hayride, provided that all application requirements of the state and town and any of its departments, boards, and commissions have been fulfilled. Said license is subject to all the conditions stated upon it. Failed to comply with any and all the conditions shall invalidate the license and render it null and void, and with the conditions of the DCG to be placed on the license. Also, that it would need to comply with the, at the moment, governor's orders, and be able to adjust to those orders accordingly.
And Mr. Berthium, would you be willing to add the recommendation by Ms. Alexander, all staff are required to have COVID training?
I would certainly love to add that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Sharon, you have that motion?
Yes, I do.
All righty. Is there a second on that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Wren has seconded the motion. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, by roll call vote. Mr. Berthium?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. La Liberty?
Yes.
Mr. Wren?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Good luck with your event, Mr. Height.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Eileen.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And the next item we have is a discussion and potential vote to reduce the town meeting quorum per section 7 of chapter 92 of the Acts of 2020. Mrs. Jacobson, is there anyone here for this? Or is there any?
Through the chair. I don't believe so unless someone, I do see a caller that doesn't have a name. It may be somebody who wants to speak to this issue, but just as a reminder, I had mentioned this to the board at the last meeting on September 14th. And at that time, I had provided a letter that Town Council Bob Hennigan had provided, just overviewing the new law, which is Chapter 92 of the Acts of 2020. At that time, the board asked that the town moderator provide a letter outlining his request to the board with regard to the reduction of the quorum. So in your packet, you do have that letter from the moderator. I had a conversation with him, and we had also had a conversation with Ed, myself, the town clerk, and the town moderator. And the town clerk and the town moderator felt very comfortable recommending a quorum of 40. I do want to reiterate two things for the public in case you were to get asked to, and it was brought up the last time. Number one, the Chapter 92 of the Acts of 2020 are specific to the time period for which the state of emergency exists under the governor's order. So this is only for town meetings held during the COVID-19 state of emergency. If another state of emergency, hopefully never, were to come about, this act does not apply. So this is just for those town meetings. So at the time now, it would apply to the October 27th town meeting. And if the state of emergency still exists, it would apply in May. The second thing, I just want to be clear, this does not preclude all 120 town meeting members from participating. This merely would change the quorum so you can move forward and have a town meeting if you didn't get the 80 participants that are required now under the charter. So this law allows boards of selectmen to take a vote with the approval and concurrence of the moderator, which you have here from your letter, to reduce that quorum. It's actually allowed to be reduced to not less than 10%, which is 8 people, and that's just, it's so low. I'm surprised it was even at that, but we're not recommending anything like that. But we feel with COVID, with October 27th coming, with some of the statistical data, as Eileen mentioned, changing statewide, and certainly Auburn's not excluded from that. We are seeing a slight uptick here. We feel that we may have difficulty getting that quorum of 80. If it pleases the board, if it's okay, I can just tell you what measures we're putting into place, and we are going to send a letter to town meeting members. But we have spoken this week. We've had a couple of meetings last week as well, Ed and myself, school superintendent, and our tech team. And our plan is to hold town meeting in 2 rooms at the high school, one in the auditorium, and then also in the cafeteria. So Joe Fahey from the school department went through and marked off how many people we could get into the auditorium safely with a minimum of 6 feet. So as you know, the very second part of the auditorium where the town council sits and our department heads sit and the public sits, we are going to use that whole section for town meeting members. So we think we could get up to 70 town meeting members in there if we wanted, with the remaining 50 easily going in the cafeteria. Again, we would be thrilled to have 120, but we don't expect to have 120. In addition to that, we would also make the same arrangements that we made at the June town meeting, which is to enable those who are uncomfortable going inside the building to participate from their cars. So we are working for lining up those cars along the side of the high school at the lower entrance and working out a system for us to have counters out there and for them to either be able to listen to it on AM 1610 or potentially even we're working on maybe getting a walkie-talkie type of system, a radio type of system where we could hand a town meeting member sitting in their car the ability to ask a question of anyone, whether it be the moderator or any of the presenters. 2 more things I want to mention. We would have the department heads sit in the upper balcony. So, and we're only going to ask those department heads to come who have items that potentially need to be spoken to try to keep the numbers down. We would have the Board of Selectmen, the school committee, and the finance committee in separate rooms with a microphone set up. So if anybody wanted to come and speak to it, they could. We've plotted it out so it looks like we could have the finance committee sit along the stage where normally we have maybe 18 or 20 people, just have the finance committee with those few of us up on the stage. And again, we will not be doing any presentations other than Ed will likely just do a summary, but whatever presentation he does, we would put online and make it available. So we'll cut out the presentations as well. So between separating everybody out all over the high school and on that first floor, allowing participation from the cars, and moving the department heads to another area to spread out the town meeting members, we feel confident that we can very safely accommodate the town meeting members and those who just for many reasons don't want to enter a building, and we respect that and we'll work with them.
Thank you. Do members have any questions? Any comments? Is there a motion?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Berthew.
I will make a motion to reduce the town meeting quorum per section 7 of chapter 92 of the Acts of 2020, which authorizes the Board of Selectmen in consultation and with the approval of the town moderator to go from 80 to 40 town meeting members for a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Berthew. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Carpenter, was it Mr. Carpenter or Mr. Liberty?
I said it. I don't know if Mr. Carpenter said it at the same time.
Okay, so Sharon, that was Mr. Liberty who seconded it. Any further discussion? By a roll call vote. Mr. Berthew?
Yes?
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Liberty?
Yes.
Mr. Wren?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you. So moving on, We've taken care of agenda item C, the Riley Award. Moving on to agenda item D, the October 27th, 2020 special town meeting warrant. You have the warrant in your packet. What we need to do tonight is to vote to approve the warrant subject to final review by town council. Do members have any questions, or we can take a position if members like on at our next meeting, or we can discuss warrant articles tonight. The CFO is here. Do members have any questions or comments?
Mrs. Goodrich,
Yes, Mr. Carpenter.
just a question through you to the town manager. Are we going to get a presentation? I see several articles, or should I say the budget is being adjusted. Are we going to get a presentation on that prior to town meeting or taking a position?
Sorry, through the chair. Generally, we can handle this however the board wishes. We can, generally, we don't give a presentation on the warrant itself, but we absolutely will answer any specific questions on any article. If you'd like more information of Mr. Carpenter or anybody, we're happy to get that for you. So whether you want to take a position on each of the items this evening, or you want more information from us, at which point we're happy to come back and present that information to you at your next meeting, Mr. Carpenter. We have time.
No, yeah. Madam Chair, I would just say I'd leave it up to the board if they would like a presentation. Where we're in such difficult times, it might be helpful for the public if we did have a presentation for people watching, not necessarily always town meeting members, but just members of the general public. But I can certainly reach out to Mr. Kastanovich if that's not something that the board thinks is appropriate or.
I don't think it's inappropriate. Mr. Kazanovich, are you permitted to give us a brief summary? And I think Mr. Carpenter mentioned Article 2 specifically because there are several decreased line items and increased, and then at the bottom, increased line items. Do you want to go over that tonight?
I'd be happy to if the board should so desire.
Do board members want to hear Article 2? The purpose for decreasing and increasing previous line items?
Madam Chair, I would be open to hearing about all of them. I have a question about one line item, but if the rest of the board wants to hear every line item, then I'm open to hearing from Mr. Kastanovich.
Okay. So I don't think we need a motion on that. Certainly, there's a majority of members who would like to hear. So, Mr. Kastanovich, if you can, and Mr. Liberty, what's the one specific line item that you're inquiring about?
I was just curious about what the increase for clerical and part-time work from, it's the very last line item from 11,000 to 21,000 was for.
Okay, so Madam Chair, let me just give you an overall update of Article 2 and Article 3, and then I can get specific to each line item if a board member has any questions.
Okay, thank you.
So Article 2, there are several line items that have a decrease and several line items that have an add-on specifically at the end. So the total amount of the decreases or the deducts or amendments to Article 2 budget total $947,150. The add-ons represent $170,000. And the major line items that are being adjusted to bring the budget into balance based upon some anticipated revenue shortfalls are primarily made up. The school department has taken a $461,000 reduction based upon the recommendation that came forward at the annual town meeting. So the actual increase over prior fiscal year is, well, when they approved the budget, the fall town meeting, it was an increase of $700 and some odd thousand. Out of that, from that recommendation working backwards, we're taking out 461. $300,000. So they actually have an increase of about $300,000 from last fiscal year. It's about a 2% increase. Specific to Mr. La Liberty's question, the clerical is actually an increase to help us man the kiosk. So we reduced the hours at the senior center in one of the clerical positions, and we increased general services to allow for additional coverage in the kiosk. We're having a hard time manning the kiosk. That's going to fill in some gaps for us. How long that will need to be done, we don't know, but certainly for the foreseeable future, we anticipate that the building will remain closed, given the expectation that the numbers may be creeping up. I think for everyone's public safety, that would be the best thing for us to do at this point in time, is to continue manning the kiosk to allow residents some access to town hall. If you recall back at the annual town meeting, we put a hold on the OPEB funding. We have an annual appropriation of $500,000. We are not raising that through tax levy, although we plan on funding an OPEB article through the use of free cash, which we were just certified today, and I'm sure you all received that. We got a certification of our free cash. We were up 1.9 million over the prior fiscal year. That's good news. And we managed to do that by taking early action, freezing the budget, not knowing what the revenue loss is going to be. As soon as COVID hit, we put an immediate freeze on spending, on all discretionary spending. Certainly, critical items were allowed to be considered. We put a freeze on hiring or filling all our vacant positions as well. As a result of that, we were able to accumulate an appropriation surplus that allowed our free cash number to be what it is for FY20. Article 3, which is the capital, 5-year capital plan, we are proposing a reduction of about $65,000. As you can see, we reduced 3 line items in the 5-year CIP with an increase in one, which is basically an oversight on our part. There was an omission there. It was requested by the fire department, but it was a bottom line CIP line item, and it got left out of the total. So between OPEB, Article 3, and Article 2, we are proposing total reductions of $1,342,150. So, Madam Chair, that's a brief overview. I'd be happy to answer any questions, come back at a later date. Board members, feel free to give me a call between now and the next meeting or before you take your position. I'd be happy to talk about any one of these line items if you have any concerns.
Are there any questions from board members?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Carpenter?
just a couple, if I may. So under Article 2, Library Associates line item, there's a substantial decrease, as well as an assistant director position. And I was just wondering, in general, do we have a number on OPEB and stabilization that we're thinking of putting in this year?
Relative to Article 2 and those adjustments to library and the senior center, certainly I think there's recognition that those services are not being provided as a result of COVID-19, both library and senior center. Early on, we eliminated 2 positions in the library after having discussions with the director, because when many people were working remotely, there was no work for these individuals to do. And so we pared down the library associates line item in conjunction with the library director based upon her goals and objectives in realigning those services to provide a quality of service that was acceptable to the residents of Auburn. In terms of the senior center, there are no program or activities ongoing at the senior center. We're facing the same problem in both of those cultural areas. And as a result of that, we, in consultation with the director, we made an adjustment in that line item as well. The individual filling that position is going to help us out in the kiosk, which Mr. La Liberty raised, and that line item, that increase. So we're actually shifting some of those hours over to the kiosk, and that individual is going to help us out in manning the kiosk. With respect to OPEB and stabilization, the certification came in today. So based upon the financial policy in place, we would be able to appropriate 50% of the net gain over last fiscal year. So the net gain was about 1.9 million. 50% of that is roughly about $950,000. So I have not had any discussions with the town manager relative to what our recommendation would be for OPEB and stabilization. Certainly I'd like to make a recommendation for those items, those reserves. We think they're very important, especially stabilization, because we may need to draw upon that in a difficult year that we're expecting for FY 2022. That remains to be seen. Certainly we're going to commence the formulation. We're beginning to start to formulate the FY 22 budget at the conclusion of the fall town meeting. And once the state numbers are known, final numbers are known for FY 21. So, Mr. Carpenter, I hope that answers your questions. We can get back to you on what our recommendation is going to be in advance of your next meeting. So you have time to think about that and deliberate over that, or you may have some questions relative to whatever our recommendation may be.
Do you have anything else, Mr. Carpenter?
No, Madam Chair, I'll follow up with the CFO offline for some other ones, which I don't want to take time tonight. Thank you.
You're certainly welcome to take the time if you need it. I mean, this is what we're here for, to discuss the warrant, but whatever you choose. So it sounds like we need some additional information to take positions on specific articles. So for tonight, is there a motion to approve the warrant as presented, subject to final review by town council?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Mr. Carpenter made the motion. Is there a second, Mr. Wren?
I'll second.
Mr. Wren made the second. Is there any further discussion on this article? By a roll call vote. Mr. Berthew?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. La Liberty?
Yes.
Mr. Wren?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you. The next item is the annual vote to reaffirm the Board of Selectmen Code of Conduct policy per the policy. And I know that at least 4 members are familiar with this. It's in our packet as well for Mr. Wren. Are there any questions, comments, or is there a motion? Is there a motion to reaffirm the Board of Selectmen Code of Conduct policy?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to reapprove the Code of Conduct policy by the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, is there a second? So Mr. La Liberty made the motion, Mr. Bertheum seconded the motion. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, by a roll call vote, Mr. Bertheum?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter?
No.
Mr. La Liberty?
Yes.
Mr. Wren?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you. And we have gift acceptance in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A. For the police department, we have from a resident with a really cute note, my son's 8th grade DC trip was canceled. I collected donations to fund the trip, now donating to the Auburn Police Department for PPE, a meal, or whatever, which is very kind. Is there a motion to accept the $100 gift?
Motion to accept with gratitude.
Mr. Berthew made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Seconded by a roll call vote. Mr. Berthew?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. La Liberty?
Yes.
Mr. Wren?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you. Moving on, we have no proclamations or recognition, so we're now under town manager items, and the town manager has included the governor's orders and some information in our packet regarding, the first one is a discussion and potential vote to extend the period for outdoor table service by licensees licensed for on-premises consumption from November 1st, 2020 up and to 60 days after the end of the state of emergency. Mrs. Jacobson.
Through the chair, thank you all. There is a lot of information in your packet, but to inform the public without going through all of it, I just want to reiterate that the actual COVID order number 50 is in the packet in its entirety. But really what we're focused on this evening is the ability for the board to vote to extend outdoor table service. Excuse me. I've divided it into two votes here because the board initially took a vote back in June, on June 4th, in accordance with Executive Order 35, to allow those liquor license holders and those holders of common victual licenses to have outdoor dining contingent upon working with, getting a review, and ultimately the approval of the building commissioner and the Board of Health, the Public Health Director. So that order, number 35, actually only allowed for outdoor dining until November 1st. Order number 50 allows outdoor dining to go beyond November 1st as far as 6 weeks past the end of the declaration of the state of emergency. So just so you know that after you took that vote, we ended up in June, we ended up with 6 establishments that had outdoor dining. We made an attempt to reach out to all of them in the last 10 days, just to see if any of them were interested in extending past November 1st. We wanted to be business friendly to give them the opportunity to do so if they chose. Again, we're recommending that the board approve it with the review and approval of the Director of Public Health and the building commissioner. I would tell you that 2 of those, we only heard back from 1 out of the 5, but we do know that 1 out of the 6. We do know that 2 of them are planning on closing. 1 has already removed their tent. The other one is planning on closing at the end of October. But that does leave 4 other businesses. And quite honestly, any one of these 2 might want to change their minds. If the circumstances change and indoor dining is no longer available, they may want to make an additional investment into the heaters and into the tents and the sides and the things that they would need to do outside. Again, there'll be all types of restrictions placed on it. They would have to work with the Board of Health and the building commissioner to make sure that they met those. But we just felt, to be business friendly, we'd recommend to you that you vote to allow this to take place should any of these 6 businesses or any of the other ones that never did it in the first place make a determination at some point that they're really going to need to have that outdoor dining even if it's colder weather. So that would be our recommendation. This is divided into 2 votes, 7A and 7B. 7A is the exact same thing for liquor license holders, and 7B is for those holders of common vic licenses.
Are there any questions or comments from board members? And the questions would apply to both agenda item A and B. If there are no questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion for agenda item 7A.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we extend the period for outdoor table service by licensees licensed for on-premises consumption from November 1st, 2020, up to and until 60 days after the end of the state of emergency, as allowed under Governor Baker's order making certain phase readjustments, COVID-19 order number 50.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Is there a second?
Second.
Was that Mr. Berthium?
It was.
Mr. Berthium seconded it. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none by a roll call vote, Mr. Berthium?
Madam Chair, before I vote, do we need to add anything in there saying that they need to recheck with the Board of Health, or is it okay to just leave it the way it is?
I
Through
believe
the chair, I would recommend that you would put it conditional upon review by the public health director and the building commissioner. Yes.
Madam Chair, I'll amend my motion to include that language.
And I'll
Thank you.
second that.
Thank you, Mr. Berthium. Is there any other further discussion or comment? Seeing none by a roll call vote, Mr. Berthium?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. La Liberty?
Yes.
Mr. Wren?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Is there a similar motion regarding agenda item 7B?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we extend the period for outdoor table service of food and outdoor dining by holders of common victualler licenses from November 1, 2020, up to and until 60 days after the end of the state of emergency, as allowed under Governor Baker's order making certain phase readjustments, COVID-19 order number 50, subject to consultation and approval of the Director of the Board of Health and the Building Commissioner.
So, thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Mr. La Liberty seconded. Is there any further discussion or comment? Seeing none by a roll call vote, Mr. Berthium?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. La Liberty?
Yes.
And Mr. Wren?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you, everyone. Moving on, we have a discussion and a vote on the tax increment financing policy, which is that big packet in your packet. I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Jacobson, who is going to discuss the tax increment financing policy, commonly known as a TIF.
Correct. Thank you. Through the chair. This is a large packet, primarily because we included all of the slides and backup information from the state. We just thought it was of interest to you. And I certainly, if the board wants to take this up for a vote at its next meeting, that's fine too. I just wanted to put it on there in case the board wanted to move forward and vote tonight. This is not time sensitive, although I would tell you it's important to get a policy in place. So for those who are not familiar with this, tax increment financing is part of the state's economic development incentive program, through which eligible businesses can receive state and local tax incentives. Now more than ever, with COVID and the economy and many economic restrictions, businesses may be looking for additional assistance when seeking to relocate to a town or to expand their existing business. So the state does have this program. It's been in place for several years. I would say probably upwards of maybe 20 years at this point. And Auburn has never had a TIF project or tax increment financing project go to the point where it went to town meeting. I will tell you, we've had a couple that we've entered into discussions with that I've made the board aware of in the past. The projects just never moved forward to that point where we had to go to town meeting. I'll tell you, we maybe about once a year or so, we get a request from a company to consider giving a TIF. Our feeling is that the state has really outlined a solid process that has to be followed. It's under Mass General Law. It's clear what the process is, what the application is, and what needs to be done. But we, through our economic development coordinator, Shannon Regan, pulled together some best practices for our internal review policy. We just felt it would be important for a business to be able to understand what the process is here, to set some realistic timelines so they understand what has to be done in order for this to happen, that it has to go through town administration, it has to go to the Board of Selectmen, it has to be a warrant article, it has to go to town meeting. This is a very complicated process, and we're doing our best to make sure that businesses understand what Auburn's process is. Auburn's process, I would tell you, is no different than any of the other processes because we follow the state guidelines for this. So we didn't do anything unusual here. We just put a lot of definitions in. We tried to explain to the businesses what they're eligible to receive, whether they need a TIF. If they don't need a TIF, does the TIF turn the key, so to speak, to some additional state incentives that are attractive to businesses, including an investment tax credit and a 10% abandoned building tax deduction, which is available for those businesses that were to purchase or lease and renovate a building that's been 75% or more vacant for a period of 24 months or longer. So there's some great incentives that are available. You really have to, the business really has to meet all of the criteria at the state level to even be eligible for assistance. So we just wanted to lay all of that out, the state requirements, what we would be seeking from the business, and make it clear that we're willing to work with the business, but we've got a process that we're going to follow. So my recommendation would be that we adopt this policy. Again, it mirrors the state policy, which is why we included everything in here. We do not have one pending right now. We had a request a couple weeks ago through a third party. We were told that we may have a company coming in seeking access to the state tax credits, which would mean that they would need a local TIF. We have not heard back from anyone representing that company yet, but they may still come in soon. So we would like to have a policy in place just so we can turn to the policy. Lacking a policy, we can still move forward. We can still work with a company. We don't want to let this stop us from progress, but I think it's important to get that policy in writing.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Carpenter, please go ahead.
No, that's Mr. Berthium, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Berthium, go ahead.
Thank you.
You were both lit up.
Yeah. So there's quite, obviously quite a bit that's written into that and trying to read through and, almost like reading notes from a lawyer, which I desperately hate doing. But my question would be, is it possible that maybe the CFO could give us like a couple of scenarios? And it doesn't have to be this meeting, but just so we could kind of, in layman's terms, say, company wants to come in, they go through this TIF, they're eligible for possibly a tax break up to 10% for the next, I don't know if there's a limited number of years that the tax break is for, and overall, a company that wants to buy a $1 million building, this is kind of what it would be. I just think that trying to read through that, and I'm in the accounting field, but trying to read through that, a lot of times I try to put scenarios into a place so that I can understand it better, and I want to know if that might be possible.
Through the chair, we could certainly give you a model example. I can tell you tonight, just to give you a verbal description of how it works, because this is very complicated. So in summary, a company that meets the eligibility requirements under the state for designation to get a certified project or to get a TIF will, under a TIF, the base value is always paid. So in other words, if a company paid $1 million for a building, and let's say coincidentally the building was valued at $1 million, and then they put $500,000 into that building, the TIF would be on the differential between the base value of $1 million and the assessed value after they make their $500,000 worth of improvements. So in general, $500,000 worth of improvements may not add $500,000 worth of value, but let's just assume it does. Let's assume everything they put into that building increases its assessed value from 1 million to 1.5 million. That $500,000 increment is what a tax break would be given on, not the entire $1.5 million value. So it's on the incremental value, which is only that $500,000. Under the law, it can be up to a 20-year TIF. I believe the minimum is 5 years. So I think it would have to be for 5 years, up to 20 years. And the town can give a percentage ranging from 5% to 100%. So you could give a very modest TIF of 5%, which would mean they're going to pay, rather than paying 100% on that $500,000 increment they just created, they're going to pay 95%. And we would give up 5%. You could give them a 50% TIF. And in general speaking, the TIF percentage really depends on the individual project. And it likely depends on the job creation and on the economic impact on the community. So if you had a great company that was looking to come in and create jobs for local residents, you'd probably want to look at a TIF that exceeded 5%. That value would have to be determined, again, based on the number of jobs. If it was 2 or 3 jobs, you're probably looking at a smaller TIF. If it's scores of new jobs and they're renovating an existing building that's been vacant, then there's probably a value to giving them more of a TIF. Those are all the things that get determined in the process of a negotiation. The 10% abandoned building tax deduction does not come from the town, that's from the state. The state will provide on their tax returns up to a 10% abandoned building tax deduction on the eligible costs that went into the renovation of the building. So let's say replacing the roof, putting in new windows, those would likely get the 10% abandoned tax deduction from the state. But to get that deduction, they need a local TIF. So oftentimes the value of the state tax incentives may far exceed what the town could offer as a local TIF, but they need that TIF to unlock the key to get to the state tax incentives. The other state tax incentive is the investment tax credit. Manufacturers are generally already eligible for 5% investment tax credit. Through this program, they could get, they're eligible for 3%. Through this program, they could get a 5%. And there's another formula that the State Department of Revenue uses to determine tax credits. Again, those are not local. We don't provide them. The state provides them. So really what we would focus on would be the TIF, which again it's just looking at the incremental value from the base value of a project to the final value when it's assessed upon the completion of the project. That base value is established as the fiscal year prior to the year in which they applied for and received their approvals to move forward. So again, I always use that as the example, $1 million, a property that's assessed at $1 million, the town will continue to get the taxes on that $1 million. But over and above that, if the company sinks a lot of money into the building, improves the building, and it increases its valuation, the town would look to give a tax increment financing break on just that differential in what it increased. So the town's never losing money from the current base. You'll always continue to get the taxes that you currently get. It's whether you're willing to give up some additional taxes to secure that company and get them here. And that plan could be 5 years, it could be 10 years, it could be 8 years. All the different factors go into it depending on what economic benefit the project would have to the town. So if you had a company that was from out of state, moving here and creating all new jobs, those are all new jobs. Those aren't transferred jobs from anywhere. So chances are that would be a highly valuable project that you'd want to look to help with the tax break. Does that answer your question, Mr. Berthium?
Through the chair, thank you very much. That was an excellent example and exactly what I was looking for. And, it just shows that, the town, there's no reason why we wouldn't want to do something like this because the town can only gain by it. It can't lose by it. So thank you for putting that in layman's terms. And that's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And just to be clear again, so under this scenario, the town administration, Ed, myself, we'd probably sit with a company and negotiate a potential TIF that we would bring to the Board of Selectmen and present to you. Of course, you can't actually vote to accept it because it has to be your legislative body, which is your town meeting, but you would want to accept what we're proposing because you then want to vote on the warrant article, just like tonight. It would be a warrant article. So the board would take a position on the warrant article to support the warrant article to go to town meeting, which ultimately has the final approval.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Carpenter?
sorry. I was just going to ask, and I'm happy that the town manager said that this was not time sensitive because I have gone through the 40 pages more than once, and I would just, I'm not expecting to be an expert because that's not in my job responsibilities per se, but I would like to, I do have several questions that which is not complete because I don't understand fully our role and certain other things that was presented. So I would just ask if we could hold it and I could go through it one more time and then send my questions to the manager. And I'm certainly not, as Mr. Berthium said, it sounds like a total upside for the town to, so I'm not suggesting that my questions are in any way meant to be construed as opposition. I just want to understand a little better and how the process works. Thank you.
Through the chair, absolutely. Town administration, we are fine holding this until the next meeting. Again, if we were to have a company that were to come in, nothing moves that quickly anyway. So I think we have time. I'd rather the board be very comfortable with this and understand how the process works than take a position tonight. There's no need to do that. There's a lot of material here. And to all members, Mr. Carpenter, all of you, if you have any questions over the next couple weeks, don't hesitate to contact us. I can always get a copy of a tax increment financing plan or approved project from another community so you can kind of see what that looks like and what the application looks like. But basically, this is very job-centric. So this program really is designed to help companies that are creating new jobs. There's very little opportunity to help companies that are retaining jobs, which I've always wished that we could find a way to help a company retain jobs because you don't want to lose a company because of the inability of them to make an investment at a time of economic uncertainty. But right now, this program is really more focused on new job creation, and the state doesn't want to support jobs that are stolen from one community to the other because that doesn't help the state. So they're looking for new jobs to be created here as opposed to being relocated from other communities within the state. So there's absolutely no need to take a vote on it tonight.
So, Mr. Carpenter, are you making a motion to table this item for a vote until our next meeting?
I will, unless other members have questions. I certainly don't want to preclude anybody who has questions from asking tonight.
I'll second for continued discussion.
So we have a motion to table it for a vote. Just because our agenda says discussion and vote, I'd rather have a motion tonight. So we have a motion from Mr. Carpenter to table this for a vote until our next meeting. Mr. Berthium has seconded it for discussion. So I assume Mr. Berthium has a comment?
Yeah, I just have a quick question, and that is, I know it's been put together by Ms. Reagan, but have we asked for any consultation through the Chamber of Commerce on this? I think this is a wonderful type of policy that we could use some input from some of the local businesses, the Chamber of Commerce that might be able to, maybe read through it and see if there's any hiccups that they see or that maybe they've seen with the state's policy that kind of, held a business back from getting the TIF that maybe we can help out with local. So just asking what type of involvement the chamber has had with any of that.
Through the chair, we have not reached out to the chamber. We're happy to. I would tell you 99% of this comes out of the state statute on the program. So there's not a lot of wiggle room on how the program operates because the state outlines what the procedure is and Mass General Law outlines what the procedure is. But most certainly, you know, we're always looking for input. Some things we can't change because it's required under state law to do this. The criteria is not set by the town, it's set by the state. The application is set by the state, and the process for getting approvals is also set by the state. So there's not a lot of wiggle room to it, but we're obviously always happy to meet with any local business or share it with the Chamber of Commerce so they're aware of it. We're happy to do that. I would probably recommend, I mean, it's a public document now. We can certainly have Shannon reach out and ask them to take a look at it. If there's anything in there that could be altered that they had a concern with, we're willing to look at that. It's just, there aren't a lot of pieces that can be changed when you have to follow the state program.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Excuse me. So we have a motion and a second by a roll call vote. Mr. Berthium?
Yes.
Ms. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. La Liberty?
Yes.
Mr. Wren?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So we'll see this on our next agenda. Moving on, we have a police department request to declare surplus property. We have the letter in our packet. This is a standard request. Are there any questions or comments?
Madam Chair, if I could just ask a quick question. It's not
Certainly.
likely. I noticed in the letter, and maybe it's a form letter type of thing. It seems like over the years we have, when they mention that it's surplus on the mileage, it always seems to suggest that there's an odometer discrepancy. So I was just kind of wondering if that's something that has beset these vehicles, or it just seems odd that so many different vehicles would have an odometer discrepancy.
Through the chair, we can check with the police chief because he does have an officer that oversees the scheduling of the maintenance for these vehicles and see if there's been any type of issue that's either been addressed by the manufacturer. So I wouldn't be able to answer you this evening, but we can certainly get that information.
Sure. I have no opposition to it going forward. It was more curiosity.
I would also tell you that when we do declare these vehicles surplus, we do try to reuse whatever parts we can, and then whatever cannot be used is put out under a bid for salvage.
Thank you. If there's nothing else, is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we declare the police department cruiser as outlined in the memorandum as surplus.
Is there a second?
I'll second, just amend to say cruisers. There, I believe there's two of them.
Not a problem.
Mr. Carpenter?
That's absolutely fine.
Mr. Carpenter has made the motion. Mr. Berthium has seconded it. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, by a roll call vote, Mr. Berthium?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. La Liberty?
Yes.
Mr. Wren?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you. Moving right along, we have a letter in our packet regarding the report on the currently available business assistance programs. Mrs. Jacobson.
Through the chair, this was a request by, started off as a request by Mr. Carpenter, and I believe the board voted on the request to have the town provide a report on various, what might be available to help businesses. And I know the board talked about whether we could reduce fees and what that value would be. And I think that was at the last meeting on the 14th. And we had said at that time that we couldn't get back with a full analysis on every single fee because we knew there were so many, and we have to check with Mass General Law. Mass General Law let's say we have 20 different fees that affect businesses, Mass General Law controls the majority of them as a maximum, not generally a minimum. But in some cases, there is a set fee that you have to charge, so you can't reduce it. I can tell you overall that the one that the board would have the most leeway with would be, and make the most sense per se, if that's what the board wanted to do, would be the liquor license fees. Because some of the other fees, you're talking $25 fees or $50 fees, but your more significant fees are your liquor license fees. That being said, I know there was also discussion on the board that not all liquor stores actually suffered during COVID, and how do you make that determination as to who should have a reduced fee and who should not. So we, for purposes of this evening, just wanted to provide you with a report, because it had come up that evening, about all the things that we have helped businesses with since COVID-19 broke out in March. So you can see here a list of all the different programs that have been put into place. And I can tell you that our Economic Development Coordinator, Shannon Regan, works with the Chamber of Commerce to make sure that all the information that comes out for business assistance programs is circulated to the entire chamber. She sits on their board, which is great because it helps promote that dialogue. And we also circulate it to our business roundtable. We also post all of these programs. Anytime it's become available, we post it on our social media, Auburn Cable TV, and our website. So we've done a good job getting the information out there. And then most of these programs are run by the state, if not the federal government. So the businesses then have to move forward on their own to actually apply. The day after your meeting on September 15th, Governor Baker announced the extension of administrative tax relief measures. So that's in the latter part of this report, the second to the last paragraph. This relief measure includes the extension of regular sales tax, meals tax, and room occupancy taxes for small businesses. And we are waiting for the state to come out with the specific guidelines on how that will work. But basically, it's extending the state's deadline for businesses to pay for certain taxes. So we're waiting for the guidelines, I believe, from DOR will be coming out. And any steps that we need to take, we will bring back to the board. Excuse me, my understanding is right now that the board wouldn't have to take any action on this, that this is a state tax relief package, and it's extending the dates similar to what the state had done previously, which was extend the dates for real estate taxes, and that ended June 30th. Right now, there is no legislation pending to extend that for next year, but my guess would be that the legislature would take this issue up again this winter in anticipation of potentially needing to extend some of these local tax dates in the spring. So we just wanted the board to be aware of the fact that we understand that some businesses have faced some severe hardships. We make available to them all the information that we receive from the state and federal government on programs that are available to them. And I believe if the board did want to make a movement toward a reduction of fees, the largest fee that you're probably looking at would be your liquor license fees. I believe the total amount of most of these fees was about $35,000 a year. So that gives you an idea of how much we're bringing in these fees. And any further information, we're going to continue to look at the permit fees that we take in. Again, most of them are small, so it's not really providing relief to businesses, as I think the board's trying to do. I would also say that this evening we came in with two items that were both intended to provide relief to businesses. And one was the extension of the outdoor seating to help the businesses. And the second is the establishment of a TIF policy. So at least businesses recognize and understand that we are willing to work with them if they meet the criteria for participation in the program. So we're going to continue to come into the board with our recommendations for programs that help the business community. At this time, we were not recommending a reduction in the liquor license fees because, again, I think two things. Our understanding is that the off-premise accounts, the package store accounts, actually did very well during COVID, and some of the restaurants may not have. And the board would have to then get into the weeds as far as determining how you would reduce those fees who would be eligible for those fees and making sure that you had equity and parity amongst all your license holders. And I think that's a very difficult thing to accomplish.
Do members have any questions or comments on this item?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Berthew?
My question, just quickly is, how sympathetic has the town been if somebody called up and didn't have their whole fee to pay, to be able to put that over, maybe several months to pay it? And is that even a possibility, or does Mass General Law not allow us to do that?
Through the chair, I don't believe we're allowed to extend out the fees because they have to be paid by like for the liquor fees, the fee has to be paid to the local licensing authority, the LLA, which is the Board of Selectmen. The fee has to be paid before they go to the ABCC at the state to get their approvals. And they have to do all that by the end of December. So I believe that would have to be a legislative change done through Mass General Law. And at this moment, we haven't seen that. We've seen a couple of changes that were put into place for the ABCC to relax certain fees, and one of those that was relaxed was the outdoor dining fee. For the outdoor licensing for the liquor licenses, the ABCC said that we did not have to charge for that, so this board took a vote to waive that fee. So that still is in place, but I do not believe that we are allowed to waive their liquor license fees, but for, you could change the amount, but I don't believe you could put a payment plan into place because it has to be paid before they go to the ABCC at the end of the year.
Do you have anything else, Mr. Berthew?
No, thank you.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything on this?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes. Thank you for the report. And obviously, the reason for the member item, at least from my perspective, the intention is to begin a discussion as to what we can do. And certainly we may think a $25 or a $50 fee is minimal, but when you match that against all their other obligations, while it may not be giving them substantial relief, it's at least showing them that we as a community value them. They've certainly been there for us in many regards. So I would just want to continue the discussion. Maybe this is something that we could have a subcommittee on, or, obviously it does have a lot of impacts. And we understand with some of the governor's orders, them not paying their local meals tax has a boomerang effect to the town. So we do know that, but we also understand and have discussed that we're looking at a multi-year shutdown, and it seems to me that we should be looking as a community to piggyback on what the state is doing at the local level. And so that's all I have. But thank you for the report, and I know that we're expecting another report on the tax financing part of it, correct? That this is not that as well. I didn't see that in there.
Through the chair, I just wanted to clarify, Mr. Carpenter, the other report that you're looking for, I'm sorry, I didn't follow that.
Sure. On the real estate tax payment plan, currently we charge interest. And I know it wasn't intended for this meeting. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss something in my reading.
Correct. Through the chair, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Kazanovich because he's been looking into that plan with the assessor.
So there are a number of deferrals relative to, I think, what you're looking at, Mr. Carpenter. Certainly, there's a hardship provision that would allow for a deferral of payment of real estate tax. But there are certain parameters and requirements that need to be met as a result of that. So there's a deferral up to 5 years on payment of real estate tax. And it's actually, I think we have 1 or 2 cases currently on the book. So it's not a common item. I think because of some of the limitations or the requirements that are necessary to approve that. But beyond that, there are some other hardship clauses that we're currently looking into. And I think a lot of that is income-based. And I got the assessor inquiring through his network of assessors to see if there's anything out there that we would be able to offer our residents in a case when they're having difficulty paying their taxes. So nothing really jumps out. I know there are a number of unique cases that may apply, but no overall relief in terms, I think, as to what we may be able to offer to our residents. So we'll get back to you on that in a week or two as soon as he completes his review of the matter.
Thank you. No, I wasn't expecting a preview. I just wanted to make sure that I was clear that I didn't miss something in the report that I read tonight. So sometimes things do skip by my, I wear glasses for a reason, and sometimes even with corrective lenses, my vision is not 20/20. So thank you.
No, you did not miss anything, Mr. Carpenter. We didn't put that information in there. This is just the information on current business assistance programs that are available to businesses. So the research that Ed mentioned is a separate report. Yes, we'll be forthcoming with that.
And just to follow up on a comment that Mr. Carpenter made about a potential subcommittee, on our next agenda, I had some conversations with Sharon to see where we're at. Mr. Holstrom served on a couple subcommittees. So on the next agenda, expect to see the Board of Selectmen goals that were adopted in December and any potential subcommittees and new subcommittees, which we can't discuss it tonight because it would be in violation of the open meeting law. But Mr. La Liberty has also proposed something for the next meeting regarding subcommittee. So we will definitely be discussing that at our next meeting. So thank you, and I'll make sure we include that, Mr. Carpenter. Let's see, moving on, unless there's something else on this. We've handled agenda item 7F, so we will take agenda items for discussion purposes 7G and 7H together. They are both for police department grants. You have a letter in your packet. Do members have any questions or comments about these grants?
Madam Chair, through you to the town manager, I was wondering if there is any matching that was required for either of these grants and what that might be.
Good question. There is no match that's required. These are both grants that we have received in the past. We have some very good grant writers at the police department, and they've been very successful, but there is no match that's required.
Thank you.
Is there anything else? Seeing none, is there a motion on agenda item 7G?
Madam Chair, I motion to authorize the police department to apply for up to $20,000 from the Municipal Road Safety Grant offered through the Office of Grants Research / Highway Safety Division in the Executive Office of Public Safety for fiscal year 2021 for equipment and enhanced traffic enforcement activities.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. La Liberty made the motion. Mr. Berthium seconded the motion. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, by a roll call vote, Mr. Berthium?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. La Liberty?
Yes.
Mr. Wren?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Is there a motion on agenda item 7H?
Madam Chair, I motion to authorize the police department to apply for up to $40,000 from the Edward J. Bime Memorial Justice Grant Program through the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security / Office of Grants and Research in support of initiatives for officer wellness, community policing, training, and equipment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Berthium has seconded Mr. La Liberty's motion. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, by a roll call vote, Mr. Berthium?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. La Liberty?
Yes.
Mr. Wren?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Mrs. Jacobson, do you have anything else under town manager items?
Actually, I do have one thing I just wanted to mention to the board. It's not on the agenda because it's too early for us to make a decision, but we, as several of you are probably also getting asked about Halloween this year. And we've been looking at this for several weeks now. We were waiting for the Department of Public Health, Mass Department of Public Health, to come out with their guidelines. So Ed and I were on a call last Tuesday with the Lieutenant Governor and a number of other statewide officials. It's a statewide call we have every week. And our Director of Public Health, Darlene and Eileen, they were on a call later that day with the Department of Public Health. And under both of these calls, we were told that the CDC had just released guidelines for Halloween, and they had just come out that Tuesday within minutes of us being on that call. So at the later afternoon call with the Department of Public Health, the state said that they were going to be coming out with guidelines, whether they were additional guidelines, revised guidelines. They mentioned that they would be looking at the CDC guidelines and then making a determination if they were going to add to them or revise them in any way for municipal use. They also made it clear that they did not want to dictate to municipalities how to run their trick or treat each year or whether to run it, although they did say that they want everyone to be aware that there are some potential health exposures if it's held at all, and if it is held, making sure it's held properly. So Friday afternoon, the state came out with their guidelines, which we just got Friday afternoon. We looked at quickly over the weekend. We're still looking at them today. We actually have an internal meeting tomorrow to discuss those guidelines because, again, they just came out late Friday afternoon. I think we got them around 3 o'clock. I would say right now, just the public has called, just be aware, it is too early to make a decision. We need to go through these guidelines. We need to make sure that if we go forward with traditional door-to-door trick-or-treating, that we have guidelines in place that we would want residents to follow. If for any reason we can't do that, and I would just say, what would that reason be? Right now, we're in the yellow. On the statewide community level, which the map that shows whether you're gray, green, yellow, it changes frequently. So at the first week, we were in the green. Next several weeks, first week we were in the yellow. Next several weeks, we were in the green. We're back in the yellow again. We need to look at trends and we need to look at data. If we want to make sure our children and our residents are safe, we're not trying to prevent people from having fun. We're trying to encourage people to have fun in an appropriate way. And I think we need to see the numbers. Right now, Halloween is about 5 weeks away. I'll even call it 4 weeks away. Many things could happen in 4 weeks. We have to keep our eye on the state. We have to keep our eye on the numbers. I would tell you that our meeting tomorrow, we'd like to start talking about maybe some alternative solutions to traditional door-to-door trick-or-treating. So for those residents that may choose to continue to do that, we would put guidelines into place. Local Halloween experience in a very safe manner so that we don't do anything that may cause our Auburn's numbers to spike. So we do have that internal meeting tomorrow with public health, police, fire, recreation, myself and Ed, and we're going to continue to watch this. It is only September 28th. We would just ask that everybody please be patient. We know that you want to know when trick-or-treating would be. There are a lot of factors that go into this year's decision that we've never had to deal with before. So understand we're doing everything we can to make sure the children are safe and our residents are safe when children come to their door. Pardon me. So we're not quite ready to make a recommendation to you yet, but we will keep you in the loop if we get more information. And I don't necessarily want to wait until your next meeting on October 13th. That may be too late, but on the other hand, that's still 17 days before Halloween and plenty of time for parents to implement whatever measures need to be made. So we're going to continue to work with the Department of Public Health and look at the CDC guidelines and look internally to make sure we can provide a safe experience. So that's why we haven't made a decision yet, and that's why we haven't come to you yet. This is all unfolding as we speak.
Thank you. And is that it for the town manager items? Thank you so much. And Thank you, Ed, for those impromptu reports that you were able to provide to us tonight. You're a walking encyclopedia of financial knowledge, so thank you. I see no tabled items. Do Board of Selectmen have any items they want to talk about?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Berthium?
I just want to, speak out and say that over the, past several years, past several months, looking on social media, talking to friends and, reading in the paper and everything else, the town of Auburn, police and fire really respond to some really critical incidents. They, they're busy all of the time. And I just think they do an outstanding job, and I don't think we thank our police and fire enough publicly. I personally will stand beside every single one of you, and I just want to, again, publicly thank our police and fire for the outstanding job that they're always doing in such a busy town that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berthium. Is there anything else? We have the minutes of September 8th, 2020. Are there any corrections or omissions? Seeing none, the chair will accept them as written. If there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We have to do a roll call on this. Mr. Berthium?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Liberty?
Yes.
Mr. Wren?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
And good night, all.